Hello and welcome once again to another episode of Don and Cherie. My name is Don, also known as the Voice of Thunder, coming to you live from Orlando, Florida, USA. And along with me is the lovely and talented Cherie Laurent, the girl from down under. Hello, Cherie!
Hi Don, how are you? And welcome to all of you from Melbourne, Australia.
Now, from our last episode, we had a great discussion where we talked about body style and how social media is affecting our perception of what beauty is. Basically, it is creating an obsession of our outer appearances, which in turn, it is creating a boom in the cosmetic industry, including having fillers and implants as well as keeping up with fashion. But through this show, it is our hope that we gave the viewing audience, that's you, enough information and awareness of how the world views beauty today and how it is affecting our perception. Now, all of this discussion started after we played your music video, Size Queen, where the song was a parody of body style and having bigger and better things in life. We also want to bring out that a dance mix of the song Size Queen is also coming out real soon, so we'll keep the viewing audience apprised of that, of when that is coming out. Therefore, like our last segment, we'll start this episode with another music video from Cherie called Good Girl Turn Bad.
Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn bad. She spent her lifetime looking for love. She gave her heart each time and all she had. She's sick and tired looking for love. Every love story she had turned bad. Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn bad. She's got the power, she's got the power. She's wild and horny, running in cash. She learned to tease, but never please. She used her sexy body with so much ease. With just one look, men will turn to freeze. She's wild and horny, running in cash. Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn bad. She's got the power, she's got the power. She's wild and horny, running in cash. Ooh, wow. Ooh, wow. Oh, baby, go for it. Oh. Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn really bad. Good girl, turn bad, real bad. Good girl, turn bad, real bad. Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn really bad. She whip your heart with one blink of her eyelash. She will never let you test her. Your heart she will smash. She's got the power, she's got the power. She's wild and horny, running in cash. Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn bad. Good girl, turn really bad. Anyway, every good girl sooner or later will turn bad.
Now that was a fantastic song. From our discussion this week, or I should say for our discussion this week, we will be discussing the coronavirus, the vaccine, as well as guns here in the U.S., and how this is affecting all of us as a society. Now, what I'd like to now direct you now to the lovely Cherie to kick off this discussion. One of the things, okay, you produced your show, you direct the show, you do everything in the show from your one-bedroom apartment. And when you're doing all of that, and then you get nominated for director, performer, for doing everything yourself, is just it's just remarkable. That's what drew me towards this particular talent that you have. It was just quite remarkable. And to be included in that in some of the recent episodes there was quite a privilege for me. We brought up earlier, we had Size Queen. Okay. And we have a number of other hits from a number of other shows, and there's other ones that are coming. Did you want to talk about those as well?
I think one of my biggest songs coming up now is called Dream Keep Us Alive. I wrote this song as duet. During this time, the reason for people to wake up in the morning is to have a dream and to have hope. And I always say, the day that when you don't have a dream anymore, the day that you don't have hope for something in the future, that's the day when you died. Because dream keep us alive, and that's what the song name, Dream Do Keep Us Alive. And it's about the inspiration that you need when you can't see the light in the end of the tunnel, when there's so much darkness. I wrote the song during the lockdown, and the amount of negative news you hear on the news every day. You see what's going on in Brazil, what's going on in India, what's going on. You are a human being and you get affected by people.
Well, certainly. Oh, yes.
And that also made me go and study, which I created an episode about the Spanish flu, because one of the things I loved is studying history, and history always repeats itself. And as a human being, if we didn't learn from the human evolution, about our mistakes in the past, that was the point.
Oh, I remember watching that show of what you put together from the Spanish flu. What was interesting is that if people saw that, and the footage that you brought forth was people wore masks even back then. They practiced social distancing. Now, this was 100 years ago, and a lot of people, guess what? They resisted against a lot of those things way back then, and guess what? Today, no difference at all. And the consequences of the Spanish flu was far dire, even more dire than they are today. Today, they got the vaccines and now distributing those throughout the world. Mind you, millions have died, but back then, it's totally unreported. They think it's anywhere from, like, say, 40 million to maybe as many as 100 million that died of the Spanish flu all around the world. And I remember seeing some episodes some years before 2020 that we're not really equipped to deal with a global pandemic. And
it's so surprising when you watch and you study about the Spanish flu that's only 100 years ago, and you talk about 100 million people, and the attitude of people as the first basically strain of the flu only affected old people and infants, and then summer came and everything forgotten, and they thought they are safe, and they start going out and partying again, and then the virus changed and come back and killed everybody, around 100 million people, which is more than the First War and the Second War
put together. Yeah, put together. I mean, it's the pandemic, the diseases have killed a large amount of people. It's amazing how much the Spanish flu has killed. When I was checking the internet, they don't really know how many. They said it could be as much as 100 million people, which is even more than the Black Death that was like during the Middle Ages. So just an astronomical, and they thought they were out of the woods, and then another wave came, and before it finally disappeared.
Dishonesty of the government at that time and how they dealt with it, because was war, and the reason they called it Spanish flu, because only Spain reported the event. No one of the other countries reported it, because the war. And when you look at what's happening this time with the coronavirus, the amount of dishonesty that we feel from a lot of government, including our government, there's a huge big mistrust with all the news, the figures, the situation. And you'll find, until now, I was like having a conversation with someone, talked to me last time, and I said to him, have you taken your vaccine? And he said, I'm not going to take vaccine. I don't believe in it. I don't think it exists. I don't trust the government. And I said, I mean, what do you want? I mean, can't you see what's going on in India? Did you see what's going on in Brazil? So what do you think? This is like a something does not exist. And I said, just think of how much the government wants your tax money and what they do to make you pay tax. This is the same government that are stopping you staying home and giving you money to stay home. And we all know, dealing with paying traffic tickets, that government will never ever let you go until they take every penny out of your blood
Oh, yes.
and all the country. So for them to destroy their own economy and for them to make you stay home and for them to pay you money just to stay home, do you really think that is all bullshit? And I mean, unless you have someone that you love and care about dies, and then you will believe it, but then it will be too late, isn't it? But there's so many people have this attitude, and I go out, and we're still in pandemic, and just recently we went to lockdown because the Indian flu came to Australia, and you go out and you find 10,000 people sitting on each other's lap. I was like, what is going on? We're still in pandemic. Still, India is going crazy. We're having people from India coming here, and then bang, we are locked down again.
And then you are under lockdown.
Yeah,
Yes, I mean that's par for the course. There's a number of countries that people can't come to visit Australia unless they're citizens, and there's a 2-week mandatory, and that's similar to other countries that exist today. Here in the U.S., we're finally getting the numbers down, and now the vaccines are now being distributed through the rest of the world. They have to get to the rest of the world, otherwise variants could get stronger. All these vaccines that we got could be rendered useless. So, and I think the world leaders are getting together today because they have to get those vaccines to the rest of the world to kill it. Otherwise, it's going to come back.
and it just ask question as a human being, why people doesn't act a little bit more responsible? You know, why we always act like children? Why can't we just take responsibility and act like adults to protect ourselves and everybody else? It doesn't really take much.
It's having that empathy for others, and not just what best suits you. We want to think about those others. We have loved ones, we got families, we got friends. There's people who perhaps have a very weak immune system, and if we spread that to them, then we should bear some responsibility to that. We spread that to others. So if you can get it, because there are certain circumstances where some people can't get it because of medical issue. We get that. But if you can get it, everybody, should carefully think about getting that vaccine. Here in the U.S., just recently, here in Florida, there was a shooting at a supermarket here called Publix. It's a very popular chain here. And a grandmother and a small child, a 1-year-old, was killed, and then the gunman took his own life. So people are concerned, say, well, I can't even go to a grocery store without the possibility of getting this. We're still going out to shops and so on with masks because we don't want to take that risk. Yet there's another epidemic here in the U.S. Years ago, there used to be a motive why somebody would shoot somebody else. The motive today, I don't know what the motive is. There doesn't seem to be a particular motive, except something happens in the psyche that snap. They have to shoot randomly. They don't have a specific target anymore.
But that's not really new because my uncle moved to live in America for a long time. And I always talk to my dad when I was a kid because I grew up in war and there was really hard time. And I was asking my dad, why don't we immigrant to, at that time, Australia, America? And I remember my dad was saying to me and my mom, they said we could get shot just walking on the street late at night by some crazy person has a gun for no reason and they could kill you. And this is news was talking to my uncle who was a surgeon, and I think he lived in California. And his wife was talking to my mom and she said, we every night until he comes home, we don't really know if he's going to come home because things like this could happen anytime. And that was something about living in the United States, the risk you're taking. Maybe it's been published more than how it's often it's happened. But recently, it's just been getting more and more and more on the news. Those news were old. I was young when I heard that, and that was like, if you want to live in the state, you have to put this in your mind. I lived in New York. I never really thought of that. I have a really lovely life
Hmm.
in New York. But things like this will you never think about until it's happened, and until you're in the middle of it. You know, it just
Yes. Yeah, that is true until you're in the middle of it, or you know somebody that was perhaps that was close to you, or a friend or an acquaintance that's
yeah.
been involved in something like that. It certainly makes you think. That's for sure.
It's like when you are kids growing up. There's something called getting old, illness, death. You hear about this. You've seen it in movie, but you think you immune will never happen to you. You think your mom and dad will never die and leave you. Nothing will happen to your brother and sisters. Nothing bad will come to me. I don't know why, because you just have this belief that those things could happen in life, but will never happen to you. And then suddenly, bang, your dad dies, and so cancer, your brother dies, and you get it's like that should not happen to me, you know. And then you ask your questions like, why we never thought it would happen to you? It did happen to you, and it did happen to anybody. But I think that's part what they call the growing up. You realize that you're not immune, and things like this could happen to anybody.
Oh,
And
oh, that's right. And
yeah,
yeah, and I really appreciate how you bring a lot of these subjects up on your show. You bring awareness. You make people think. You don't make the decisions, of course, but you want to bring these things out to the open and let people think about, okay, these are the things that are happening in the world. What can we do? I like the way how you bring out what can we do to help make this a better life, and not just for ourselves, but for the people that are around us, for our family, and so on like that. So a number of those episodes that I've watched, I really appreciate how you bring awareness to the people, and it's a humanitarian a work when you bring awareness to to the public like that. So
it's good to open conversation. Conversation is very important.
mhm.
I learned this from my childhood. I think I'm very lucky. I had very understanding, educated parents, and I think this started when I was growing up in terms of religion. When I used to ask a lot of questions, and sometimes I'm number nine. So when you are number nine, that means there's eight people older than you are, and you hear a lot of conversation around and a lot of subject, and you get exposed to so many things because you're the little one,
Mhm.
and you sponge, you suck from everybody around you, and then you go back to asking so many questions because I always listen. And a lot of time, my mom she get frustrated and said, "Oh my God, you ask so many questions." And it comes to I think when it comes to the subject of religion because I ask so many questions because I always said, why we are practicing in this religion, why not the other religion? Why there's difference, especially when you grow up. I grew up in Iraq, and you see the conflict between the Jews and the Muslims, and then the Catholic in Lebanon. And you always wonder as a child, why are people fighting? Why? And I remember my dad said to me, "We're not forcing you to do anything. You've got the freedom. Go and read all the religion and make your own decision." And that was probably the best thing that dad did to me at that time because going and studying and knowing and gave me the freedom to think and to make my own decision and basically make my own choices in life based on my life experiences. And that's why I respect people's decision of thinking. That is very important. And what I
Mhm.
do on um, I open the conversation and I use my life experiences and people I know experiences. The show has been going all around the world now, and I receive so many incredible amount of letters. And well, we don't use letters these days; we use emails.
We use emails, yes.
I like calling them letters. I still love the letters, but the whole emails basically, people ask me and suggest and telling me their stories, and because it's a different culture, the globalization through some platform like YouTube or Roku TV or all these. It make people in Jordan, and it make people in South America, and it make people in America and in Australia watching the same subject with the different of their cultures, and it open understanding for people because you can't judge people unless you understand their background, where they came from, what their cultures, what they were thinking, and that will make you more understanding to deal with them.
I had a previous experience some years back, and then I was sent over to India for 2 months. Before I went to India, I had to study the culture. Of course, I talked to my Indian counterparts where I was working in regards to understanding that. So when I went over to India, I really had to pay close attention to the cultural differences, because there was communication problems between our counterpart over in India and here in the U.S. And then I found out something very basic in what I found in India for the conversation. One of those things was the word no. The word no has a very negative connotation in India. So whenever you ask anybody to do anything there, it's always yes. So one of the things that you wanted to avoid when dealing with your Indian counterpart is you never ask a question that demanded a yes or no answer, because guess what? It's always going to be yes. So learning how to communicate with each other is to first understand what you brought out earlier. We need to understand the culture, because when people don't understand, people generally fear what they don't understand.
I have a similar experience.
Yes.
I was hired to be an art director for an advertising agency in United Arab Emirates in Abu Dhabi, and I was very, very young. And I went to the company, and suddenly I was the head of the department. I was an art director for a smaller company. Then I got this job, which is a bigger job. And when I went there, I have 6 designers underneath my supervision, because I'm the art director and they work underneath. And they were all Indian, and they didn't speak any word English. At the same time, they did not know any of the software. In my generation, we use graphic design. We use all the Photoshop and Illustrator and CorelDRAW and all this kind of software.
Oh, yeah.
More from the old generation who use everything by drawing things. And they are very talented artists when it comes to handwork. But we're talking about the time now, the amount of work and the speed that those applications offer you to create a logo, as example, and make the changes and give all the different colors and all the sizes and everything else and do the representation in one day. Trying to follow it with the old way of sketching, it takes a week or maybe 2 weeks. So I was their boss, and also they did not react to women very well. They don't like to get order from a female. On top of that,
Oh,
I was
they had a caste system, as they called it. That
yeah, they did not like to get told what to do by a woman,
yeah,
and
I found that in India as well. They still have that caste system in regards to men and women in their roles, and
yeah,
they were slowly getting westernized, but they're years from breaking that mold of that caste system.
was very difficult. And also, I was young and I was too pretty for the job to be able to control six men much older than I am, and I'm their boss, and I have to tell them what to do. And they didn't have the skills to do the job. And I'm the one under the hammer because I'm the art director,
Hmm.
and the general manager gonna come and say, "Where is the deadline for all this?" And I said, "Well, you're giving me six designers, none of them use computer. How the hell am I gonna do the job?" So I have to basically adapt completely different character. I have to try to understand as far as I can possible how to deal with those men. Um, my understanding before in the other company, I worked with Westerners, and we worked as a team, and we just sit together as a friend. We put the concept, and then we start doing it together. So there was no boss, there was no hierarchy. In this job, the first day, I had lunch with those six guys, and then the manager came and called me, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to be friend with them so they could get my instruction." And he said, "They will never ever listen to you. If you sit and make friend with them and you are already younger than them, look at the way you look, they will never take you seriously. They will never listen to you, and then the whole company will go down." So he said, "You need to completely isolate yourself. You need to be the boss. You need to learn how to give the instruction, and you need to demand of them to submit on deadline. And if there's not this, you have to put rules for it and punishment and stuff like that," which was very hard for my personality to do. But then I just have to think about it and think, if they didn't do the job, the company gonna go bankrupt. That means all of them they're gonna come back home to India. They're gonna lose their job. I'm gonna lose my job. No one gonna be happy. And why is that? Because I'm soft. I have to adopt what they call it in business, the bitch mentality for a woman. If you are a man, they
Okay.
don't get a bitch, but for a woman, you get called a bitch. So I have to basically become really hard on them, not even smiling, giving orders, giving deadlines, make them wait, working every day until 12 o'clock at night. And we managed to get 350 jobs out, and we saved the company. But I wasn't very popular. They did not like me at all. I know that they really hated me. But in the end, I saved their jobs, and I saved my job, and I saved the company.
Okay.
So
Well, good.
on not understanding their culture.
And so you had to adapt to the culture. You had to
Yeah.
join in on that. So wow, that's amazing. So, and looking at the time here, we're getting at the top of the hour. Is there anything else, Cherie, that you want to
Well,
tell your listening audience in regards to your TV show, your music? I know we touched upon a lot of these things in this episode.
I think with this broadcast, let's go through a format that there is episodes on Vimeo, which is vimeo.com/Mashery TV show. And let's say episode number one from season number 6,
Okay.
you will find the three segment of this episode on Vimeo.
Hmm.
Have a look at this episode. We talk about different subjects. And the subjects that we'll be talking about next week, including subjectifying female from a male point of view and a female point of view, which is what we talked about, how women now taking full control of taking their photos by doing all the selfies and taking control of presenting themselves the way they want to be presented because they are doing their own photo shoot.